Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Current History video blog. Today, I'm going to be talking about my recent writing on what it means to have Pakistan as a mediator between Iran and the United States, and how this fits historically in the pattern of what are known as middle powers acting as mediators, which I think will likely become more common as we move into a more multipolar world system. So on April 8th, with less than 2 hours before President Trump's deadline to destroy Iranian civilian infrastructure, the United States and Iran agreed to a 2 week ceasefire. Pakistan brokered it. The agreement halted 40 days of U.S. and Israeli airstrikes on Iran, secured a commitment to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, and opened a window for negotiations towards a permanent settlement. But the more interesting story is not the ceasefire itself, it's how Pakistan got to the table. The broker was Field Marshal Asim Munir, Pakistan's army chief, and in practical terms, its most powerful official. In Pakistan's civil military structure, the army chief has historically exercised more real foreign policy authority than the prime minister. When Munir personally traveled to Tehran, that was not a routine diplomatic visit. It was a signal that Pakistan was putting its institutional weight behind this effort. Pakistan built this position deliberately over decades, and the foundation is its relationship with Saudi Arabia. That relationship dates to the 1960s, when Pakistani troops first deployed to protect Saudi frontiers during regional conflicts. The 1982 military agreement formalized the arrangement, stationing Pakistani troops and trainers in the kingdom. Saudi Arabia helped fund Pakistan's nuclear program from the early 1970s, and by the late 1990s, a covert nuclear assurance arrangement was in place. The formal Strategic Mutual Defense Agreement, signed last September, did not create this alliance. It codified one that already existed. During the Iran War, the exchange became concrete. Pakistan deployed fighter jets to Saudi Arabia and secured a $3 billion payment from Riyadh, the most recent installment in a 60-year relationship built on a straightforward exchange: Pakistani security capacity for Saudi financial support. But that history bought Pakistan was credibility in the Gulf. Both Washington and Tehran knew Islamabad had real skin in the outcome, not just a reputational interest in being seen as helpful. And that distinction matters. The conventional image of a mediator is a neutral party with no stake in the outcome. That model has limits. A party with no stakes has no leverage and no particular reason to be trusted by either side. The more effective model is the interested broker, a party with real relationships on both sides, enough to be trusted and enough to be useful. Qatar has operated this way for decades, maintaining ties with Hamas, Taliban, and Western governments simultaneously. The relationships that made its mediation possible were those same ones that would have disqualified a classic neutral. Pakistan in 2026 fits the same model. It shares a long border with Iran, giving it a functional relationship rooted in shared regional interests. It has a deep security relationship with the Gulf states, and it has enough proximity to Washington to carry messages credibly. None of those relationships is neutral. All of them are useful. So Munir's April 15th trip to Tehran came after the first round of his talks in Pakistan ended without a deal. He carried a new message from Washington and worked to secure a second round before the April 22nd ceasefire expiration. The effort was coordinated across Pakistan's entire government. Munir in Tehran, Interior Minister, also in the Iranian capital. The Prime Minister conducted a 4-day Gulf tour along with all this. Trump credited Munir by name, calling him a key reason negotiations were likely to continue in Pakistan. The ceasefire framework Pakistan helped produce calls for an immediate halt to hostilities, reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, and a 15 to 20-day negotiating window. It remains fragile. The U.S. naval blockade on Iranian ports continued after the ceasefire took effect. Iran threatened to close the Red Sea in response. The US has now imposed its own blockade on the strait, and Iran reversed its opening of the strait on April 18th, after the US Navy fired on an Iranian vessel. Despite all of this, the sides continue to talk. A framework exists, and exists because Pakistan had the relationships to make it possible. Other parties are now stepping in to further stabilize the situation. As I mentioned in a previous video, European coalition is going in to try to stabilize the strait as part of an international mission. And so in this, and that also points out that in this role as a mediator, Pakistan is not the only country operating like this. So Turkey mediated a grain corridor agreement between Russia and Ukraine in 2022. Qatar facilitated the 2020 Doha agreement with the Taliban, along which the US withdrew from Afghanistan. And India has positioned itself as a voice for the developing world without taking sides in US China competition. Each built relationships over years and deployed them at a moment when American attention was elsewhere. The Saudi arrangement is not charity. Pakistan's mediation is not altruism. Both are investments in relevance, and Pakistan just collected on them.